Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We want an honest election, we want an honest count, and we want honest people working back there because it's a very important job. So that's the way this country is going to win. That's the way the United States will win. And we think we will win the election very easily. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land. We'll see. But we think there'll be a lot of litigation because we can't have an election stolen like this. And I tell you, I have been talking about this for many months with all of you, and I've said very strongly that mail-in ballots are going to end up being a disaster. Small elections were a disaster. Small, very easy-to-handle elections were disastrous. This is a large-scale version, and it's getting worse and worse every day. We're hearing stories that are horror stories, absolute horror stories, and we can't let that happen to the United States of America. It's not a question of who wins, Republican, Democrat, Joe, myself. We can't let that happen to our country. We can't be disgraced by having something like this happen. So it will be hopefully cleared up, maybe soon, I hope soon, but it'll probably go through a process, a legal process. And as you know, I've claimed certain states, and he's claiming states, and we can both claim the states, but ultimately I have a feeling judges are going to have to rule. But there's been a lot of shenanigans, and we can't stand for that in our country.
As he was talking, I was trying to reach out to some senior Republicans to ask when the intervention is going to happen. Because this isn't just partisan. This isn't just dangerous. It's nonsensical. It's illogical. And there's so many things to say. One of the things that I was thinking about listening to him now is how much we listened to him for the past, 4-5 months, telling his voters, do not vote early. It's fraudulent. And now we sort of suspected it then. Now we know the reason for that, so that he could have this moment in the White House briefing room. So he could say that the votes that are coming in by mail are fraudulent. And the reason is because he knew that Democrats, because we are in a pandemic, were more apt to vote early by mail and to not want to risk their health and sometimes their lives by going to vote in person. It's a setup. He set the country up. He set his supporters up for a moment like this, which is completely false. And you said sad. It is sad. I mean, I'm not an emotional person, and I'm having trouble kind of keeping it together after listening to the President of the United States saying what he just said.
This president clearly knows that this is not going to end well for him, or he believes that, and he's trying to take the rest of the country down with him. Yeah. He's trying to take the voting system down with him, the democratic process down with him. And beyond being completely selfish, it also is just wrong. And as you said, where's the intervention? I don't know where it is. And it probably should have happened months ago because, as you said, Dana, he already told us he was going to do this. He's already said months ago, the only way I could lose this election is if there were widespread, massive fraud, which we knew was not going to happen. And now he is apparently, he believes he is losing the election. The numbers are not heading in his direction. And he's claiming that there is fraud everywhere in the country except for one place, the place where the vote count is narrowing in his favor in Arizona. This is a complete farce and a travesty, and it's incredible that he's doing it from the White House, but notable also, Vice President Mike Pence, nowhere to be found.
Well, the other thing is the point that you made earlier, Abby, which is the president would like the nation to believe that there is this grand conspiracy in every state in the nation to take this election from him. And yet, somebody else gave him a list of Republican accomplishments in this election to read from, right? Not one Republican lost a seat in the House. That Republicans held on to the Senate. A tremendous night of success for the Republican Party. So President Trump would have you believe that the elections went great for every Republican in the country almost, except for him. So the diabolical Democrats and big money, big media, and big tech conspired. And we all got together and we decided what we're going to do is we're going to help every Republican win elections across the country except for Donald Trump.
Yep.
Does that make sense to anybody except for the most fevered brain?
Yeah, unfortunately, the answer is no. Is it logical? Of course not. Did what you just say make sense? Absolutely. Trying to dissect it. But I will say it again. One of the reasons why what we just heard and saw is dangerous is not just because he's the president of the United States. It is because there are so many people who absolutely love him and believe everything he says. So he and mostly his children on Twitter are sowing the seeds of doubt in democracy in a way that is going to make it very hard for his party, frankly, to come back from.
You know, the president and his children, especially, are actively and openly inciting violence in this country. The president's son tweeted that Trump will go to war over this election. The president said tonight that his supporters were so angry that they couldn't get into a place where they were tabulating votes, that they would get violent almost. So it's intentional and it's dangerous and it really needs to stop. The votes need to be counted and the president needs to abide by whatever that result is. He signaled tonight that he is not going to be willing to do that, and that is dangerous for this country.
It is Friday, the 6th of November of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. And has anybody really gotten much sleep this week? I know I haven't. I am due for a really good nap, and I haven't had one for quite a while, not with all these election shenanigans. And, some personal uproar, too. Mom's doing pretty good. Still in a bit of discomfort from those ribs. And, look, she bruises quite easily. She's of the age when that happens. Her skin is paper. Doesn't take much to tear it. So she's doing a bit better. It's going to be a while to be on the mend. Though, can't keep the old gal down. My God, she just wants to get up and about, which is good. I mean, keep her moving. But still, don't damage yourself before you're fully recuperated. But we all do that anyway. Hey, enough of that. Looks like Biden's taken the lead in Pennsylvania. Can we now say he's president of the United States? How about Georgia? He took the lead in Georgia, too. Well, we can't quite call him president yet because Donald Trump is pulling, his election shenanigans. The Trump campaign and Republicans got busted in Pennsylvania running a fraud scheme that they hoped would. It's just so crazy. This is what they did. This is what they got caught in. The Trump campaign hired some local GOP operatives, which is just a nice way of saying, some rat fuckers that are on the ground, okay, in the state. And they then went and called people and told them to, make sure you get your ballot in 3 days after the election. Which is what ballots are being held aside by order of the Supreme Court. Well, sort of by order. Out of an abundance of caution, they are taking those ballots and putting them aside, anything that comes in late. So then they could hopefully find some ballots from people who took up the offer from these operatives to bring in their ballots late after the elections. So then the Republicans could point to those ballots and say, see, election fraud. Well, they got caught. Didn't hear much about it now, did you? No. Because, as they say, Trump sucks all the air out of the room. Yeah, if the room is the size of the Milky Way, man, what a black hole that guy is. Just suck. Not even light can escape. So, I like the sound of President Joe Biden. I think we'll just call him President Joe. I like that. He's one of us. And we have a great vice president, too. Yeah. Maybe President Joe will put her on some kind of commission to make sure that all of these scofflaws and crooks are brought to heel. I know we have Moscow Mitch McConnell still there with his graveyard where democracy goes to die. But this is not a failure. I keep hearing that we have just had a great failure. 5 million, he's going to probably have 6 million in the popular vote, is not a failure. Okay? Just because they're able to game the system through gerrymandering and any other number of local strategies so that the minority stays in power, that's not our fault. We have to win by just like an enormous, well, let's put it this way. We have to be in the positive part of an election 20% more just to get even. Just to get even. That's how the old boy networks work. That's how people like Moscow Mitch stays in power. That's how a Lindsey Graham stays in power. Jamie Harrison raised more money than anybody in the history of God, practically. And it still wasn't enough. Because you're already 20 points behind and you just, it's sometimes hard to catch up. You win by 2 points and it's not enough. So we get to that 20% level, but we actually have to get to the 30% level. Lindsey's on Fox saying he's going to give $500 million to the Trump legal defense team. Where'd he get that money? Is Deripaska sending money from Kentucky to the Carolinas? Probably. I wouldn't doubt it. It's not Deripaska's money after all. Yeah. Hey, there's a rumor floating that Vlad has Parkinson's and he's going to step down. And Vlad said, no, he's not. So we got that kind of story going on, too. I wonder what's going on. Of course, they also denied that they poisoned Navalny in spite of all the evidence that Germany and England and everybody else, the French even. Vlad said it wasn't true, so therefore it's not. Does that sound familiar? I cannot wait to get rid of these mobsters that have infiltrated our government. We need to purge these people. Trump pretty much made everybody, even civil servants, toe the line and pledge fealty and loyalty to him. And those that didn't got fired or, put into some position where they quit. Tantamount to being fired. why can we not then go and make sure that these people that are working in government that were, well, embedded, why can't we just make them sign a loyalty oath? I don't mean to Joe. I mean to the Constitution of the United States, which is what they're supposed to be giving an oath to. I think we should make a spectacle of this. Prove your loyalty to the Constitution of the United States. Prove it. Those that balk, well, I guess you don't have a job in this government. Maybe you can get one with, I don't know, some offshore influence campaign company. Trump did. Oh, excuse me, I have the sniffles today. I don't know why. I got to look at what the pollen is, even though we do have some precipitation here. I wonder if that's it. It's not cold. It was actually quite tropical yesterday, or last evening at least. Anyway, excuse me for the sniffles, but we have actually quite a show curated for you today, as we do every day. But it is Friday. And the French 77s are all mixed and poured and ready to imbibe, and I would say celebratory French 77s. President Joe. God, I love that. Well, at the top, of course, Trump claiming voter fraud is not only nonsensical, it's actually dangerous too, and it is. Oh, one other thing I want to make mention is, can we stop with this idiocy that, sure, Joe got the presidency, but we have to live in Trump's America now because look at the 68 million. Well, you know what? 5 million more. Could be 6 million, like I stated. They're living in Biden's America, these deplorables, and we better just let them know about it. Remind them. But you know what? We can only look forward when we take care of what got us here into the present. And what got us here into the present needs to be rooted out by the roots. All right? When Nazi Germany was denazified, they didn't take the strategy that America took during Reconstruction. All right? The time for coddling these deplorables is over. They don't want to be a part of America. And yet, they are still here. They're our neighbors. I've got to tell you, I'm looking at my neighbors with a jaundiced eye. Because we know what they're capable of. Do you notice that there's no Antifa storming these buildings and saying, stop the vote? I'm seeing a discernible lack of, tear gas, bicycle kettling. And even flashbang grenades. Where's the flashbang grenades? Better call those Trumpers Antifa, and the cops will start cracking heads then. Oh, yeah. All right, what's on the rest of the menu? Enough of this rigmarole. Yeah, it's rigmarole. Counties with the worst virus surges overwhelmingly voted for Trump, and of course, brainwash the brainwashed. A federal court ordered the FDA to reassess the environmental impact of genetically modified salmon. Yeah, they are. And a divided Washington Supreme Court ruled the state's dairy workers are entitled to overtime pay, and that's going to have ramifications across the whole farming industry. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Brazil's federal police opened an investigation into the hacking of computers at one of the country's high courts. And who did the hacking? We don't know yet, but we have an idea. And Canada reported the country's first case of a human infected with a rare strain of swine flu, H1N2. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page, and you know the drill. If you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and how about sending us the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars and pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue resisting as the founders originally intended. And thank you, and you know who you are, thank you for your generous recent pledges. We are, except for Mom having her little tumble, I need to stick closer to home, but I need to get to the computer store and get the machine, the one machine, and then we'll switch out the MacBook Pro, the broadcaster. Well, actually, it's a MacBook. That's how old it is. But we're going to switch that out here in the future, and probably before the end of the year. And but the other formatting computer we'll be hopefully picking up this weekend or the beginning of next week, and get that working hopefully soon. I got to get the attendant software, of course, and make sure that all the switches and gears are working properly, and then we'll put it into its workhorse position and put this workhorse that is working like a horse currently, well, out to pasture, because Windows 7 will be unsupported beginning in December. Wow. That's how old this computer is. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it's so simple. Go to @NetrootsRadio, and there it is. Tom takes care of it, and we thank Tom for doing so. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms, of course. You know, the one that I don't really want to name right now. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found mixed in with all the rest of us, because we are there, and so are they. All right, we will now dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Let's see, Carla K. Johnson, Hannah Fingerhut, and Pia Desfonde bring us this first offering. And they are writing for the Associated Press. U.S. voters went to the polls starkly divided on how they see Trump's response to the coronavirus pandemic. But in places where the virus is most rampant, Trump enjoyed enormous support because he promised them it's going to be over. It's going to be over. They're a death cult, and they believe anything the cult leader says. An AP analysis reveals that in 376 counties with the highest number of new cases per capita, the overwhelming majority, meaning 93% of those counties, went for Trump, a rate above other less severely hit areas. Most were rural counties in Montana, the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and Wisconsin, the kinds of areas that often have lower rates of adherence to social distancing, mask wearing, and other public health measures, and have been a focal point for much of the latest surge in cases. Taking note of the contrast, state health officials are pausing for a moment of introspection, even as they worry about rising numbers of hospitalizations and deaths. They hope to reframe their message and aim for a reset on public sentiment now that the election is over. Well, I would add, maybe if you have an adult running this thing and let Dr. Fauci and the rest of the scientists do what they need to do, we might all be able to open up once again. Choi of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A federal court judge ordered the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to conduct an environmental assessment of genetically modified salmon that he said was required for the agency's approval of the fish, but, and there's always a but, the judge did not vacate the FDA's approval of the salmon for human consumption in the meantime because, he said, the risk for near-term environmental harm is low. Yeah, once you start turning into a frog in the future, well, that's in the long term now, isn't it? The FDA has to go back to the drawing board and do its homework, said George Kimbrell, legal director for the Center for Food Safety, one of the groups that filed suit challenging the agency's approval of genetically modified salmon. The ruling by U.S. District Judge Vince Chabria in San Francisco centers on Aqua Bounty salmon, which are genetically modified to grow faster than normal salmon. In 2015, the fish became the first genetically modified animal approved for human consumption in the U.S., after clearing other regulatory hurdles, except for the environmental assessment one. Because they didn't have it, apparently. So it's not a reassessment then, huh? Aqua Bounty began growing the fish in indoor tanks at an Indiana plant last year. There's no ocean there. In an email on yesterday, a representative for Aqua Bounty noted that the ruling covered the potential environmental impact of the fish and not the health and safety of eating them. Okay, good. The company said the salmon are not yet being sold in the U.S. It had previously said the fish could be in the market by late this year, just in time for Christmas. But advocacy groups maintain the company's own tests have shown it is not 100% certain the fish would be sterile because Aqua Bounty has ensured the fish do not escape and breed with wild fish because they're bred in tanks and bred to be female and sterile. And like I said, there's no ocean near Indiana. So advocacy groups once again maintain the company's own tests have shown it's not 100% certain the fish would be sterile and that the risk of fish escaping into waters could grow if the company were to expand operations. In his ruling, Judge Chabria noted that the FDA determined the probability of salmon escaping and surviving in the wild to be quite low, but he said the company's production could expand and that with every new facility built, the possibility of exposure grows. And even if it's unlikely the fish could get into the wild, he said the FDA was still required to assess the consequences of that possibility. Aqua Bounty fish are Atlantic salmon, injected with DNA from other fish species that makes them grow faster. The salmon already has been sold in limited quantities in Canada, where it does not have to be labeled as genetically modified. Johnson of the AP brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A divided Washington Supreme Court ruled the state's dairy workers are entitled to overtime pay if they work more than 40 hours a week, a decision expected to apply to the rest of the agriculture industry. For the past 60 years, state law, like federal law, has exempted farm workers from classes of workers who are entitled to overtime pay. But in a 5-4 ruling, the court found that unconstitutional. The majority said the Washington state constitution grants workers in dangerous industries a fundamental right to health and safety protections, including overtime, which is intended to discourage employers from forcing employees to work excessive hours, get fatigued, and have an accident and maybe die. Okay, it's not to necessarily always to put money into someone's pocket. It's also to keep people from dying. The ruling applied directly only to the dairy industry, but its reasoning covers all of the 200,000 plus farm workers in the state's 10.6 billion with a B agriculture industry. Since 1983, the Washington Supreme Court has recognized that all farm work is very dangerous, so it's very easy to see how this will extend to all farm workers, said Lori Isley, an attorney with the nonprofit Columbia Legal Services. We are so happy to see the law in our state moving forward in that direction. The decision makes Washington the first state to grant farm workers overtime protections through the courts. California is phasing in some overtime protections, while New York this year began requiring overtime pay when farm workers work more than 60 hours in a week. Maryland and Minnesota also offer overtime protections to farm workers. Okay, that brings us to our break, and, let's go to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Both Sides Now. Aaron Sorkin's latest film, The Trial of the Chicago 7, takes us back to Chicago in 1968 and the politically motivated prosecution, or if you will, persecution, of 7 members of a handful of different anti-Vietnam War movements and 1 Black Panther. Most of these defendants had come to peacefully protest during the Democratic National Convention, only to have Mayor Daley embroil them in an orgy of police violence. Now, Steven Spielberg's producer first pitched Sorkin way back in 2007, so that makes this film surprisingly timely. If you love Sorkin's TV work, you should know that this film feels very different. It's still set in a Sorkin world, where very intelligent people have a difficult job that reaches out to the public in some way, that both requires and values their expertise, but here Sorkin's dialogue is tighter and his pace snappier than you're used to. He even breaks up his signature walk and talk in the beginning by having each defendant cut into the previous one with an inappropriate continuation to what has just been said. The montage dramatizes our heroes' eventual defense to their conspiracy charge that the only thing these people had in common was a cause, a time, a place, and Richard Nixon's hatred. This division also speaks to Sorkin's larger point, and for this reading I take a cue from Jeet Heer's article on this film in The Nation. Effectively, Heer sees Sorkin greatly influenced by King. Yeah, not that King. Like many comfortable white moderates, Sorkin looks at protester versus repressor and bemoans the rift revealed when the ignored clash with the despotic. Can't we all just get along, he cries. We're all Americans, you know. And this movie does a fair job of making that point. Sadly, it would be more convincing if Sorkin hadn't had to fabricate one prosecutor's amenable personality, make up one sympathetic agent provocateur out of whole cloth, and bring us home with a moving and totally fictional ending. Still, The Trial of the Chicago 7 is worth a watch. I mean, in a straight roll, I can't believe Sacha Baron Cohen is so good. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. In the shadow of Wangshan Mountain in southeastern China lives a beige frog with black stripes. The concave-eared torrent frog, or Odorrana tormota, gets its name from its unusual hearing apparatus.
It has kind of ear canal-like structure like humans and like most mammals. For most frog species, the eardrums are located on the body surface, on the lateral part of the body surface. But here, the eardrum is invisible because it is embedded deep inside the head, in the skull.
Biologist Albert Feng from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Back in 2006, Feng and his colleagues discovered that this unusual anatomy allows the frogs to hear ultrasound, which includes frequencies greater than 20 kilohertz. Biologists had always assumed that ability was restricted to some mammals, because it was only known in bats, whales, dolphins, and some rodents. We can't hear in that range. The streams that the frogs live in are quite noisy, but most of those sounds are low frequency. By restricting their vocalizations to the higher frequencies, including ultrasound, the frogs are better able to hear each other.
The higher the frequency, the less the signal is distorted, or at least masked by the ambient noise.
In many animals, females prefer mating with larger males, usually because that's a sign of health and strength, and bigger males tend to produce lower frequency vocalizations. But with higher frequency calls being more effective in this habitat, Feng wondered if females might actually prefer smaller males. Over the course of several nights, the researchers captured 35 pairs of frogs engaged in what biologists call amplexus, which means while having sex. The biologists measured the length of each male, as well as the length of those males found nearby who were unlucky enough to be caught and also not having sex. Turns out, size really does matter.
The females of this are very unusual in that they really prefer smaller males over larger males.
Next, the researchers brought the frogs into the lab. Each female was placed alongside 2 males. Here, too, females opted to mate with smaller-bodied males, and an analysis of the mating calls showed that the smaller males did use higher-frequency sounds. The study was published in the Journal of Zoology.
We're thinking by females preferentially choosing small-sized males, that actually we can see the trend over generations. You can see the gradual evolutionary changes in the trait. Over multiple generations, they gradually develop this ultrasonic capabilities.
What isn't clear yet is whether the females are visually assessing the males for their size, or whether they just have an easier time hearing their higher frequency calls, making them more likely to mate with smaller males. That's exactly what Feng's team is testing now, by broadcasting mating calls to the females in a laboratory with the lights out. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Presented as a public service. netrootsradio.com.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Voting is the core of democracy. So, are there some simple steps to take to make the United States more of a democracy? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. For starters, let's make it easier to register to vote. Allow same-day registration. Stop voter purges. End felony disenfranchisement. Make mail-in voting a norm, as it has been in 5 states prior to 2020. Allow no excuse necessary absentee ballots. Give adequate resources to the U.S. Postal Service so that ballots can be timely delivered. Make early voting a permanent feature of our elections. Increase the number of days of early voting. And increase the number of polling places so that voters who are voting in person don't have to stand in line for 6 or 8 hours in the heat or the cold. At least replace the 1,700 polling places that have been discontinued in recent years. Make sure that there are an adequate number of drop boxes. Reinstate the protections of the Voting Rights Act so that people seeking to vote are not discriminated against on the basis of race. Make sure that there is a paper trail for ballots so that we can have assurances that votes are in fact counted and that recounts when necessary can be conducted accurately and fairly. In a word, do everything possible to allow every eligible voter to vote and then count every ballot. We can do this. It's not that complicated. We just need to find the will to make our country a far better democracy. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1982. That was the day that 11 women graduated from the New York City Fire Academy. They were the first women firefighters ever to serve in the city of New York since the department was founded in 1865. The inclusion of women firefighters did not come easily in New York. In 1977, for the first time, women were allowed to apply to be firefighters. Although many women had passed the written part of the exam, they were continually denied employment because they failed the physical test. The women sued citing discrimination. One of the leaders of the suit was applicant Brenda Berman. The federal district court in Brooklyn sided with the women. Not everyone was happy about the decision. A group of demonstrators came to City Hall before the graduation with signs reading, quote, "I want to be saved by firemen." The Uniformed Firefighters Association also challenged the ruling. They tried to block the ceremony in the courts, arguing that training requirements had been changed to accommodate the women. Despite the legal challenges, the ceremony went on as scheduled. In his speech, Mayor Ed Koch said, quote, "As all of us have known all along, bravery and valor know no sex." After the graduation, the controversy over women firefighters continued. The women often faced sexual harassment on the job and vilification on the editorial pages of the city's newspapers. Bumper stickers reading, quote, "Don't send a girl to do a man's job," could be seen on the car bumpers of many male firefighters and at the city's firehouses. The women firefighters stood up to the harassment, testifying before the city council and holding street demonstrations to bring awareness to the discrimination.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
With the Friday morning sun barely peeking over the horizon, Joe Biden took the lead in Georgia's vote count. In Pennsylvania, well, I have to come in and redo my newscast because at 8:50 a.m. Eastern Time, Decision Desk HQ now projects that Joe Biden has won Pennsylvania and its 20 electoral college votes for a total of 273, projecting that Joe Biden has been elected the 46th president of the United States of America. I guess it's a good time to also congratulate Kamala Harris on becoming the first female vice president-elect in American history. Reality didn't seem to matter to Donald Trump when he took to the podium in the briefing room Thursday evening at 6:45 Eastern, just when the networks were in the middle of their nightly newscasts. All of them went to the president live, but within moments, ABC, NBC, CBS, and MSNBC all cut away due to his ridiculous and dangerous lies. CNN and Fox Not News carried the whole thing, but CNN's banner warned that Trump was lying, and when it ended, Anderson Cooper told some truth.
That is the president of the United States. That is the most powerful person in the world, and we see him like an obese turtle on his back, flailing in the hot sun, realizing his time is over. But he just hasn't accepted it, and he wants to take everybody down with him, including this country.
But over on Fox, Not News, not a single host or guest criticized or called out Trump's undemocratic conduct. Instead, they pretended like it was normal. But let's go back to reality again for a moment. Joe Biden is winning the presidential popular vote. At press time, he's up by more than 3.9 million and on his way to being the first candidate to defeat an incumbent president in 28 years. But as of the morning of the third day after Election Day, Biden has still not been declared the winner. This is because Republican-controlled legislatures in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin refused to update their laws to allow election officials to open, process, and count mailed ballots early enough to get close to a complete tally on Election Day. By the way, Joe Biden also spoke Thursday afternoon. Unlike Trump, his remarks were measured, his tone confident and secure in knowing that Trump will soon be defeated.
In America, the vote is sacred. It's how people of this nation express their will. And it is the will of the voters, no one, not anything else, that chooses the President of the United States of America.
Again, breaking news. As of 8:50 a.m. Eastern Time Friday morning, some organizations have begun calling the race for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris after Pennsylvania's vote count turned in their favor. Meanwhile, in opposite world, Conman Jr. took to Twitter to call out the Republican 2024 contenders for not joining in their gaslighting attempts to overturn the will of the people. So, Senator Lindsey Graham and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, two of Trump's most reliable sycophants, said Pennsylvania's Republican-controlled legislature should consider invalidating the popular vote and appointing its own slate of electors to award the state's electoral votes to Trump, even though the state Senate leader had already rejected such a scenario. And over in Georgia, Republican incumbent Senator David Perdue fell below the 50% threshold in the count, making it possible that he could be forced into a runoff against Democratic challenger Jon Ossoff. The battle for Georgia's other Senate seat is already going to a January runoff after Democrat Reverend Raphael Warnock led the crowded field. So potentially, both of those Georgia Senate races could be set for a January 5th runoff, at which time that state could determine which party controls the Senate. Democrats obviously fell short of their goal to pick up the 4 seats they needed to win the majority. They picked up 1. So sweeping Georgia would split the Senate evenly at 50-50. If that happens, and Democrat Joe Biden is declared winner of the presidential election, that would mean that his vice president, Kamala Harris, would break any ties, essentially flipping control away from the Republicans. Meanwhile, Election Day has come and gone, and despite Donald Trump's claims that
COVID. By the way, on November 4th, you won't hear about it anymore.
The United States reported more than 121,000 new coronavirus cases on Thursday alone. That's an all-time high. The previous all-time high was the day before. The United States is quickly approaching 10 million cumulative cases and 235,000 total deaths. A new forecast from the Centers for Disease Control predicts 31,000 more additional American lives could be lost in the next 2.5 weeks alone. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world. Along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of around 50. That's all. We had a bit of rain overnight. We'll have a mix of clouds and sun earlier today with a slight chance of a rain shower. Highs will, of course, be around 50 with winds light and variable. And then rain picking up later on this afternoon. We're going to have an overnight low in the mid to upper 30s. And winds will be light and variable, expecting, well, about 1/10 of an inch of rain overnight with another, almost a 1/4 of an inch tomorrow, Saturday, with a high of only around 48 degrees. Partly cloudy, followed by increasing clouds with showers developing later in the day. Winds will pick up tomorrow out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County here in the southern part of Oregon are now spiking, and they have now spiked to 2,114. Went right past that 2,000 mark, and so there you are. Did Southern Oregon vote for Trump? Yeah, they did. Now they have more virus cases, and one more confirmed dead, which has increased it to 8. And that is an undercount, of course. Pollen is rated as none, so I have no idea why I was sneezing so this morning. The air quality index is good at 38 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.81 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 51 and sunny. Paris is 51 and sunny. Rome is 70 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 45 and cloudy. Kabul is 49 and fair. Hong Kong is 71 and clear. Tokyo is 54 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 60 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and fair. And New York is 65 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Brazil's federal police opened an investigation into the hacking of computers at one of the country's high courts. The head of Brazil's Superior Court of Justice, Humberto Martins, said all sessions have been suspended until experts assure they are safe from hacking. The court is meeting online since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Martins said the attacks took place on Tuesday without offering more details. Neither judges nor staffs of the court are using computers connected to its internet network because of the security risk. Brazil's Supreme Court and the country's top electoral court said in separate statements that they are beefing up their online security, though they have not been targeted.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
This final amuse-bouche comes by way of a raw story, but originally is out of the Agence France-Presse. Canadian health authorities reported the country's first case of a human infected with the H1N2 virus, a rare strain of the swine flu. The case, detected in the western province of Alberta in mid-October, appears to be isolated, and there is no increased risk to Albertans at this time, local health officials said in a statement. This is the only influenza case reported in Alberta so far this flu season, the statement said. It added that the unnamed patient experienced mild influenza-like symptoms, was tested, and then quickly recovered. There is no evidence at this time that the virus has spread further. Canadian health officials are looking into where the virus came from and to verify that it has not spread. Since 2005, only 27 cases worldwide have been reported of people infected with H1N2, not to be confused with the more common H1N1 swine flu virus. There have been no cases in Canada prior to this one. The H1N2 strain is not a food-related illness, and it is not transmissible to humans by eating pork or other pork products. This is a rare type of flu in humans, typically acquired from exposure to infected pigs and not known to spread easily from human to human. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, though you do know Netroots Radio's going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays and maybe President Joe. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking election news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.